Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video. Today we are going to be talking about the books I least enjoyed in 2022. I've already put up on my channel the books I most enjoyed in 2022. Much more fun video, go watch that one. But I do need to talk about the books I didn't love so much as well. I am then planning a third part to this mini series, which is every book I read this year ranked from worst to best. So I'm not going to be ranking the books in this video. I'm going to be talking about them in the chronological order that I read them so that I don't spoil anything for that video, but you will at least kind of know what's coming at the bottom of the pile. And then the not so sure will be all the books that fall somewhere in the middle. These books were all rated between 1 and just under 3 stars. That's kind of where we're sitting with these books. I have only got one star as a spoiler, so you know, thankfully mostly I read 2 stars and above, and my feelings about some of these are a little bit complicated. We'll get into it. My ratings are a little bit complicated, but that's kind of the general idea. 3-star onwards is kind of like, if I rate a book 3 stars, it's fine, and most of the books I rate are 3 stars, so they will come in that third part video. So these are the books that are rated under that. So we're going to start off with the most controversial book for me to dislike on this list, and that is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This is a really well-loved book. It's a big TikTok read, and it's also a major film, but it's not on UK Netflix, I don't think, because I tried to find it to see if I liked the film any more than the book, but I couldn't find it. But anyway, you probably know what this is about because it's a pretty big book, but if you don't, Lucy and Josh work together. They work at 2 separate publishing houses, which they are now being combined, and they are effectively put up against each other to compete for the same job. They work in the same office. They have a very hate relationship, but then over the course of them fighting for the same job, realize that they have other feelings for each other. I rated this book 2 stars. And my relationship with this book is complicated because I don't hate it, but also I do. So I like the writing style. I think Sally Thorne is a good writer. She is funny. It's well written, apart from there are enters in weird places when people are speaking. That's maybe more of a formatting thing. But in general, I think this book is funny. What I then don't like is kind of everything else. I don't like that Lucy sees Josh as a serial killer and she is really afraid of him. And I just don't like that in books. I don't like the whole kind of a man who is portrayed as being sexy and attractive as someone who is terrifying to a woman. So that's a me thing. I just don't like it. And Lucy is really against nice guys. She goes on a date with another guy called Danny, who, yeah, of course, he's portrayed as being a little bit odd near the end to make it justifiable that Lucy ends up with Josh. But I don't think there's much wrong with Danny. He's just a nice, average guy, like most people are going to end up in a relationship with. And I just felt like the disrespect he was shown was completely unnecessary. Josh, at times, his nicer side is shown, and that is the part of the story that I like, is when we get a bit of nice Josh. But I just didn't get on with Lucy. I didn't get on with Josh for most of the time. I just didn't enjoy this. I don't get why people are more opinionated about this than in loving this than the love hypothesis. I don't get it. So it wasn't for me, and that's fine. That's The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Next up, we have the biggest disappointment read of the year for me, which is Nick and Charlie by Alice Oseman. If you've watched the video where I talked about the books I loved this year, I loved Heartstopper. It's like my whole being. And I really thought I would love this, and I just didn't. So this follows Nick and Charlie after sixth form, when Nick is going to be going to uni. Oh no, so Charlie is still at sixth form, Nick's going to be going to uni, and it's about kind of Charlie not coping very well with that and thinking that their relationship won't survive Nick going to uni, and guilting Nick a little bit into going to uni. And I think the realism of this conversation is a thing. It happens in My Mechanical Romance and is handled better than in this. This is a novella rather than a graphic novel, and I think it maybe suffered from not having the graphic novel elements because I just missed their cute faces. And obviously Alice Oseman knows her characters better than I do, but I didn't feel like the way that Nick was portrayed in this is how Nick would behave. I just felt the way he reacted to like Charlie getting really drunk at one point in the story. I was like, I don't think that's how Nick would handle this situation. So I'm happier for my Heartstopper world to just exist without this. That's how I feel about it, really. I don't know what Heartstopper 5 is going to focus on, because this feels like the kind of thing Heartstopper 5 could have dealt with. Maybe Heartstopper 5 will come before this, maybe after this. I have no idea. Or it will recreate this story. I don't know. But I'm really gutted I didn't love this, because obviously I should have done. But I just didn't. I didn't get on board with it. I didn't feel it was how they would react. Charlie, I mean, I don't drink. And so a whole scene that revolves around people drinking is like never my favorite, because it's why I don't drink, for like the way that Charlie acted while drinking. But it just wasn't for me. And I'm really disappointed about this one. I don't mind hating other books, or I don't hate many books. I don't mind disliking or being disappointed in other books if I don't have a history with the author or a history with the series. This one hurt me because I couldn't understand really why I didn't like it, but that's where we are. So that is Nick and Charlie by Alice Oseman. Also rated that one 2 stars. Next up we have Dating Dr Dil by Nisha Sharma. I was so keen to read this because it's a romance. That's my bag. And I love stories where I can learn about other cultures, other traditions. I love that. There's so much more I could learn, and I would love books to be able to introduce me to those other parts of society that I don't get to engage with as much. And I just didn't love this. I loved it more than the other 2 books we've spoken about. I rated it like 2.5, 2.75. So not bad. It just missed the 3-star because it's enemies to lovers. It's not my favorite trope. And at least we did learn sort of from the opening scenes that Prem and Karina were attracted to each other, and so you could kind of get on board with it, but it just isn't my favorite trope, and it wasn't done in my favorite way in this story to make me kind of recover from it. Also, we had the additions of the aunties, and that kind of worked, if was a little bit disruptive, but we also had this professional matchmaker who had like an email thing at the beginning of each chapter, and it was just too much for me. I don't think it added to the story. This book is quite chunky, and I just didn't need those additional parts to it. Do I believe that Prem and Karina would really have ended up together at the end of the story? No, not totally sure I do. And I'm not sure that Prem was that likable for some of it. So I just found this one difficult to get on board with. I'm really gutted I didn't love it more. I really wanted to, but unfortunately I didn't. That is Dating Dr Dil by Nisha Sharma. Okay, the next one is a complicated one. So the next one is You, Me and Our Heartstrings by Melissa C. I read this for a vlog earlier this year. I love the cover. I love it. This is a YA. And I love YA. I've been in my YA era this year. This, I think, is maybe slightly younger YA than I like to read, but I thought I would enjoy it. The idea of this, like if you read the blurb, is so me. We have Daisy and Noah, who both go to a music college, and a video of them playing together goes viral, and it's what I thought from the blurb is about them dealing with the kind of price of that fame and how they handle it. It isn't about that. The viral video part is a very small part of this, but that is how the blurb makes it sound. So I just felt like that part of the story is weird. Noah has major anxiety. As someone with anxiety, we love that rep. And I've mentioned it in my last video, but I love mental health rep when it's done how kind of it sits with me in books. Daisy has cerebral palsy, and Melissa C is a disabled author, and so I love that we have an own voices story here. I think that CP is something which should be talked about more in books, so we love to see that. One of the things I do really love about this story is it's very diverse culturally with disability, and it's kind of woven into the story without it being a big deal. So we've got friends who are Turkish, Noah has a gay brother, and the story is not about their cultures or traditions. They're just there living in the world around Noah and Daisy, and I really loved that. And I love that we had the rep of Noah and Daisy both having disability, mental health conditions in the main story. Daisy's CP is not handled in the way I expected, and I absolutely cannot speak to it because that is not the own voices part for me. So I don't like to pass too much judgment on the Daisy part of the story, but I just didn't feel it panned out how I wanted it to. In the Noah part, that I can speak as an own voices kind of person for Noah's story, and I do feel like his anxiety was well represented, but they jumped to medication very quickly for someone so young, and I think we needed a bit more exploration of other ways that Noah could manage his anxiety. You know, medication might have been the right option, but we just maybe needed a bit more exploration about that. This is also quite a Christian story, and so there's a part in the middle where they consider having sex and then don't. Totally fine with that. Like, Daisy says she doesn't want to, Noah says cool, love that. But then sex comes back later on, and it's kind of like a bit, there's just some pacing and editing in here that just didn't quite work for me. So I rated this 3 stars at the time because I felt guilty because the author doesn't have that many reviews, and I am sure there are people who would gain a lot from this book. It's just unfortunately it wasn't for me, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not the target audience of a YA, so that's absolutely fine that it wasn't for me. But I think this is like similar to Dating Dr Dil. It's like a 2.5, 2.75 is kind of where I sit on this. I really need to update my Goodreads to reflect that, because I think I don't need to feel guilty about the fact that this story just wasn't for me, and so I don't need to feel I need to rate it 3 stars. So I probably will adjust it. I wanted to love this more, and I do think there are people out there who will love it. If you think that any of the things I've spoken about sound like something you would enjoy, pick this book up. There's definitely some stuff to love in it. I love the sort of music school part of it. I love reading musical stuff. I love watching stuff like Dance Academy and things like that. So I love those parts of it. I loved some of the rep in it. I loved the world we lived in. I just needed it to pan out in a different way, and it just didn't for me. But I'm sure there will be people that will love this. So that is You, Me and Our Heartstrings by Melissa C. Okay, this is the other big disappointing read of the year for me, which is Love on the Brain by Hazelwood. So I loved The Love Hypothesis. I talk about it in the video where I talk about the books I loved most last year. I loved it. Everything about it, I loved it, apart from the whole Olive being small thing, but otherwise, I really loved it. This book is a regurgitation of The Love Hypothesis, but not written as well. I have a full reading vlog, a spoiler vlog of me reading this up on my channel if you want my in-depth thoughts as I go, where I'm like rolling my eyes at the camera and like getting on a rant. But basically, the story in this is very similar to The Love Hypothesis, just in a slightly different setting, not done as well. We have some really unnecessary third act drama, which I just felt did not add to the story in any way. Like, be a romance or be a drama, it just didn't need to be both. My big issue with this though, like, I liked Levi, he was fine. I didn't love him as much as Adam, but he was kind of cute. He really loved B, that's fine. But I didn't like B. Olive was likable, she was endearing, she was chaotic and scatty in a way that you just fell in love with her. B is anti-men in a way that is, to be honest, excessive. Now, I don't work in STEM, but I do work in a somewhat, at least at senior management, male-dominated environment, and I do not feel the need to talk down on every man who works in the industry and just like tarnish them with the same brush, and that is what B does. We have a slightly unhealthy obsession with Marie Curie. There's a weird bit with some cats in there. And also, it does what a lot of romance books do, where it talks down as men who are not over 6 foot tall and big as being average. And we need to move away from that wording in books. I do feel a bit for Love on the Brain, because it might be that having read a lot of romances this year, Hazelwood is just being on the end of my anger about this. So I apologize if that's the case, but she's adding to it. So, but I just feel like we get so much B is small. In fact, let me read the exact quote to you, which is, B is the size of 5 bananas stacked together under a trench coat. What even is that? And the amount that Hazelwood talks about people being small is starting to make me think she has an issue with bigger people. And I'm sure she doesn't, but it is the way that as a bigger person, it is making me feel. And I just want to see some curvy rep in her books. Something other than stick thin would be great. Yes, of course, there are small people in the world, and that's fine, but not every single person is small and attracted to a 7 foot super attractive man. And so I just need to see a bit of differentiation, or I will have to stop reading her books, which I don't want to do because I loved The Love Hypothesis, but I just didn't feel I needed the same story repeated. I got a little bit over the top there. I apologize, but I just am really disappointed in this. Love the cover, love the sprayed edges. This isn't going on my unhaul pile right now because it looks freaking good on my shelves. but I'm just disappointed by this. I'm really interested to see the next Ali Hazelwood book coming out in 2023. Very interested to see what that's like. We do have a kind of small person, tall person on the cover, but he doesn't have black hair. He's got blonde hair. So we'll see if it's any different. And then I'm going to read the novellas as well. And if after all of that, Ali Hazelwood, I don't feel like there's changes, I'll have to stop reading, but I don't want to. But I think I would be happier if she's going to keep doing it, that The Love Hypothesis exists as the only book in my world that feels that way. At least I wouldn't feel so shut out of her stories. So anyway, let's get off that topic. I've said my piece, but that is how I feel about Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. Next up is Why You Shouldn't Cover Buy. And this is Summer at the Castle Cafe. I have a lot of books with similar sort of titles to this. Summer at the Castle Cafe by Donna Ashcroft. I bought this in the works in like a 2 for £6, 3 for £6 deal. So, you know, it only cost me £2. It's fine. But I have learned, because there's another book I'm going to be talking about in a little bit, that I need to not just cover buy books because they're cheap in the works. There's potentially a reason for that. So in this story, we have Alice and Jay, and Alice has just moved to Castle Cove following the death of her mum, and she starts working at a cafe. She meets Jay. They kind of clash a little bit at first. They end up not clashing. So it's not really enemies to lovers because it's not that severe, but it's a little bit enemies to lovers, and that's not my favorite trope, so this story just isn't for me. I love the setting. I do love these kind of English village romances that have multiple books in the series that all link together and intertwine. I actually do love that kind of book. I've read a lot of books by English authors, and so I feel like I've read enough to know that this is not as well written as some of the other ones. I didn't like Donna Ashcroft's writing. I thought it was not very well edited. It was like the book had gone through lots of different versions and no one had read through it again the whole way through to check if stuff made sense. There was some stuff that referred back to stuff that hadn't even happened, or had happened but happened in a different way to how it was being said. I just didn't love this, and I felt like it was underexplored. The pacing was weird. So unfortunately, I only gave it 2 stars. I gave it 2 stars because I did like the setting. The general idea of it is fine. I was interested in Kath and Sean and their relationship. But otherwise, unfortunately, the story just wasn't for me. And I wouldn't pick up anything by Donna Ashcroft based on this book, unfortunately. But it's very well rated on Goodreads. And so what on earth do I know? So if you liked this, please don't be offended, because there are a lot of people who liked this book. So that is Summer at Castle Cafe by Donna Ashcroft. So next up, we have an audiobook. So I don't have the physical copy here, and I don't have fancy editing software that means I can put it up, so I have a reminder to myself to talk about it. So next up we have One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle, and this book is, I think, more universally unliked than other books I've got on this video. One Italian Summer is about Katie, whose mum has died, and we really hear about that. I understand, you know, I'm lucky enough, my mum is still with us, but I understand it's obviously devastating when a parent dies for many people, but I did not need to hear about it for about 10 chapters in the weird depth that this goes into. And Katie ends up going on a holiday to escape her average husband, and she goes back in time or goes into a dream or something and meets her mum. And so she spends the summer with her mum. Through the course of that, she understands her mum, who frankly she is obsessed with, is not as perfect as she thought she was, and she forgives her a bit for that. She ends up kind of figuring out some stuff in her own life. This book is so weird. It's so weird. And the reason I picked it up is because it's read by Lauren Graham, who is Lorelai in Gilmore Girls. The author is apparently a really big fan of Gilmore Girls and said this book is like Gilmore Girls. It's nothing like Gilmore Girls. I guess Rory and Lorelai are kind of obsessed with each other, but in a different way to how this book is portrayed. And I don't like Lauren Graham as an audiobook narrator. I'm gutted to say that because I love her, but I do not like her as an audiobook narrator. This was unnecessarily long. It took me ages to get through. It's the creepiness of Katie and her mum's relationship. Katie makes some really poor life choices, and it's really difficult to get on board with some of those and to forgive her. I feel really bad for Eric. Adam, it wasn't for me. Again, there are a lot of people who love it, and that's fine, but it was not for me. And I only rated it 1 star. It's the only book this year I have rated 1 star. I didn't ever think I would rate a book 1 star. To be honest, I really didn't think I had it in me to hate a book like that. I can usually recognize that even if I don't like a book, there's stuff in it to like. And so that's why, you know, mostly they get 2 stars. But this one, there was just nothing for me. I just didn't love it. And that's fine. That is One Italian Summer by Rebecca Searle. So last but not least, we have another cover buy that I bought from the works in these like 3 for £6 deals that I shouldn't have bought, which is the Cozy Cottage in Ireland by Julie Caplin. This is the story of Hannah, and Hannah meets a guy called Connor in Ireland in a bar, and he's being like stalked by this woman. So she kisses him to get the woman to leave him alone, and he finds this fascinating, and so they sleep together. Hannah escapes from him in the morning without speaking to him because she doesn't want to, she's just like, you know, she's not a one-night stand kind of girl, and she doesn't know how to handle it. So she leaves him, and she is in Ireland to go to a cooking school as like a sort of flighty thing she's decided to do. She's a really kind of got her life together, straight-laced kind of person, and then on a whim she decides to move to Ireland for this temporary cooking school. And when she gets there, she realizes that Connor is the son of the famous chef that runs the cooking school, and so then they have a kind of enemies to lovers thing, and then it's no longer enemies to lovers. The idea of this book is so me. When I reread the blurb now, I'm like, I love it. I love the idea of this. Julie Caplin is friends with Donna Ashcroft, and I just think their writing style collectively, the kind of book they're writing, is not for me. I just don't get on with it. This book I do think is better than Castle Cafe. I do think it's better written, but there are elements of it I don't like. There are some elements, the same with Donna Ashcroft, to be honest. There are some parts where it's trying to be modern and kind of smutty, and then also trying to be really kind of old-fashioned, and it's really disjointed. Castle Cafe is exactly the same, and the mixture of like steamy scenes but not steamy scenes was weird. Like, be one or the other, it's fine. I think that these authors probably don't really want to write steamy scenes, but their publishers have told them that steam sells, and so they should write steam, but they kind of write it in as an afterthought, is how sometimes that these books appear. And I found the dealing of Hannah difficult because Hannah is a lot like me, and then we were very much made to feel that Ireland Hannah, as opposed to England Hannah, Ireland Hannah was much more fun, and Connor loved Ireland Hannah. He didn't love England Hannah, and so she becomes Ireland Hannah. It was like Grease. It was like Danny and Sandy. And I loved Grease when I was a kid, but my goodness, I realize how problematic it is now. And I just felt it was problematic for anyone who's like Hannah, who's made to feel like they shouldn't be that way. It's not my kind of story, and that's fine. I do own the book that comes before this in the series because I bought it before I'd read this, and I am intrigued to read it because I think that Mina, Hannah's sister, is going to be interesting to read about, but I'm probably just not going to prioritize it because I know I could read better written books than I have on my shelves, but who knows. Anyway, I rated this 2 stars for the same reasons as Castle Cafe, though I do think I enjoyed this more, but there are things in there I liked the premise of it. There are some parts of it I liked, it just wasn't for me. And that's it. That is the 8 books that I didn't love this year. As I say, I only rated one of them 1 star. In the main, I had a great reading year. There's just some of them that weren't for me. Please do not be offended if one of your favourite books is in this list. Book reading is very subjective, and what one person loves as compared to what another person loves is completely different. So please don't be upset or anything, because that's what we're about. But yeah, if you love these books, honestly, I love it. A lot of the books I love are on people's worst lists, and that's cool. I don't even feel a need to comment. It's totally up to them what books they love and what books they don't love. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and then as I say, the final part will be all the books that I had ranked from worst to best. So it's going to be interesting to see the order that I have for some of these. I have got like 55 books to rate, so it's quite a lot for me to think about what exact order I'm going to have them in. So I have to really think about and plan that video. But I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would really appreciate a like. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe. Please do comment down below what books you didn't like this year. Maybe I could add them to my TBR and see if I didn't like them. So please do comment down below, because I would love to hear from you. I will also have links down below to my Goodreads, to my planning YouTube channel, which is where the other half of my VLOGMAS content is, and my Instagram, which is shared between my planning and my book content. So hopefully you will come and check out my Instagram over there as well. Otherwise, I'll see you in my next video. Bye.